Thanks very much to Advanced Higher Education for inviting me to provide this provocation about the future of higher education. It's impossible to talk about the future without acknowledging that we're in the middle of a pandemic. What's interesting about COVID-19 is that while everyone recognizes the horror and the terrible impact of COVID-19 in education, the pandemic has also been described as an unanticipated and even exciting digital education experiment. And indeed, the pandemic has been seen by some as an opportunity to leapfrog into a digital future. But I'm worried about that digital future. I think that the pandemic has seen a number of practices which were already of concern pre-COVID become entrenched, and that without intervention, 2030 will see higher education fully colonized by extractive, technology-based business models. So the word colonized has been used metaphorically by scholars, previously describing data colonialism or digital colonialism. And strictly speaking, as Maldonado Torres explains, refers to the political and economic relations in which the sovereignty of a nation or a people rests on the power of another nation. I prefer the term coloniality, which instead he explains as the long-standing patterns of power that emerged as a result of colonialism, but that define culture, labor, intersubjective relations, and knowledge production well beyond the systems of administration only. And the point is that these kind of colonial ways have become normalized, that they're acceptable ways of engagement, and they are treated as the default terms of relationships. And while they don't take the traditional historical forms of direct subjugation of one nation by another, the fundamental patterns, behaviors, and relations of power persist and are re-inscribed today. New systems of extractive, technology-based business models are an important vehicle for this re-inscription, enabling the ultimate end goal of profit-making and market expansion, which of course was the ultimate end goal of colonialism. While they hold out promises of progress, they require buy-in into a system characterized by inherent inequality and shaped by a homogenizing worldview underpinned by new forms of exploitation. So, to talk about new forms of profit-making and market-making in education, it's necessary to impact with the impacts of digitization in society more general. Unfortunately, so far, higher education is proving to be merely a subset of these broader extractive systems, unable as yet to provide robust alternatives, as we're still in the early stages of researching, testing, and imagining what these alternatives might be. Numerous scholars have described how technology is being appropriated and shaped by neoliberal systems. The culmination of the scholarship has been provided in the detailed synthesizing and analytic account of Zubov's work on surveillance capitalism, which she succinctly describes as a new economic order that claims human experience as free raw material for hidden commercial practices of extraction, prediction, and sales. Interestingly, she also describes it as an expropriation of critical human rights that is best understood as a coup from above, an overthrow of people's sovereignty. It's striking that this word sovereignty reappears because this is the loss of sovereignty at the heart of the colonial project. Under colonialism, individuals were themselves a form of capital through their labor, forced, indentured, and enslaved, while their assets, such as local knowledge, natural resources, fed the new economy. These relationships unfortunately persist, albeit rebranded under a contemporary veneer. But now, individuals provide an additional form of capital, their data, a powerful financialized asset exponentially growing in value through the collated minutiae of the total human experience. What people do, their habits, behaviors, where they are, the moves they make, the views they express, and so on. The marketization of higher education has already been described, and we know it's pervasive. Extractive business models, by the way, are not limited to the big tech companies, which we tend to focus on, but they provide templates for businesses everywhere, including in education. It's no coincidence that there's currently increased investment in ed tech companies, which are leveraging and experimenting in ways they describe as innovative, of exploiting student and academic data and student data and experience for profit. The opportunities of the grand experiment afforded by the pandemic and of algorithmic academia has seen an annual investment growth rate of 16.3%, expecting to reach 404 billion in 2025. It's so that the fact that so much of this technological infrastructure is being made by venture capitalists with their profit-making agendas is a cause for concern. For digital infrastructure to be fairly and equitably available, it needs to be a public good, and universities should be able to leverage this public good. But it's not just the provenance of this infrastructure, it's the nature of that business model, premised on data and financialization, that is especially worrying. People often understand this data to mean the extraction of private information like names or phone numbers. And while this is important, Zuboff has highlighted how digital exhaust is where value lies. In other words, the ambient data that digital services collect, what we listen to, where we linger, who we connect with, etc. This data is collected to build models which can predict and influence and which can shape the behavior and thought. The marketized nature of universities has been recognized for decades, and the term academic capitalism has summed up how knowledge has come to be understood as a private commodity rather than a public good. Prior to COVID even, the platform university exemplified the role of big tech companies and their practices shaping academia. What we've seen in recent times is how the pandemic has been a catalyst for the extension of surveillance capitalism into higher education, as universities everywhere have invested in services and platforms to service and serve the over 200 million university students who pivoted hurriedly online. The relationships with companies such as online program managers have substantially increased, and in fact the whole range of companies providing unbundled services for the entire student journey, from student applications to online proctoring and the student experience, including learning analytics and the like. Even in the rush during the pandemic, the question of student data privacy has received some attention, and attention is being paid to the ownership of academic content through regulations. Even we're starting to see data privacy positions in universities emergent, but nevertheless, this is an interesting emergence. But much less attention is being paid to the digital exhaust and to the control of that extracted data. In contemporary business models, students are not owners of all their data, and the risks are considerable, given that student ambient data is being consolidated into broader digital economic ecosystems. So even if the core data was made private, the digital exhaust as an asset adds value. Let's take one example, Google for Education. It offers a collection of tools to collaborate, doc slides, sheets, etc., communicate, mail, meet, chat, classroom management, Google Classroom, forms, administration, and so on. These tools are a subset of the larger Google ecosystem. Think Maps, Translate, Chrome, YouTube. And the promise of easy integration is paid for by consolidated and manipulatable data sets of students who will become consumer citizens. Hatcham Young. Through the shift to ERT, universities have delivered an entire generation of students to extractive business systems driven by profit-seeking imperatives. And there's no time now to talk about the cooperation, yes, even between competitive tech companies, nor their special relationship with third parties. What's critical about the Google example is the centrality of Google search at the heart of that Google alphabet behemoth. Prior to the pandemic, it was already understood how search played a gatekeeping role in knowledge formation. Google has over 90% of the search engine market, and it's so popular a brand that it's become a synonym for search. One recent study shows that a significant percentage of search results on Google's search front page result in pointing to Google's own products, such as YouTube and others. This is a worry. If profit-making rather than relevance or neutrality determines which information is found online, this has real implications for human behavior, for comprehension, and for knowledge creation. I think it's significant that it is a decolonial scholar, Achille Mbembe, who has warned of knowledge systems being undermined by the logic of value extraction and, to add, thus subverting the knowledge agenda. I'm running out of time, and so I'll end where I began, with coloniality. Maldonado Torres reminds us, as modern subjects, we breathe coloniality all the time and every day. What this means is that these extractive practices are not outside of us as citizens, as educators, as academics, nor as students. We are participants and we have responsibilities. In short, extractive economic systems are shaping the future of higher education. And unless policymakers and knowledge makers act soon, fast mutating forms of coloniality will be imprinted in the DNA shaping the future of higher education. Thank you.